Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. Hey, welcome to Hell Has an Exit. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. On this show, we interview a lot of recovering addicts, a lot of people I personally grew up with. If you guys are listening, this is now full video, so please subscribe on YouTube. You can check out the video on YouTube. You can listen to the audio on Spotify, or we're on Apple Podcasts. We're vocal on Instagram. Please follow us on Instagram at Hell Has an Exit. Today I have a childhood friend of mine, Santiago. I've known Santiago probably for like 15 years now. Has it been?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably like 15 years.
Since
maybe like 16 years.
Freshman year. When was that?
Freshman
2003?
Yeah.
I was a junior.
3 years older.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you know me before military school when I got shipped off to military school?
Definitely. Yeah.
I
think absolutely. I knew you. Military school was like shortly before I went to college, before we kind of lost touch for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
That's what's up. Yeah, so Santiago has been clean for 4 years. When do you get 5? Did you just get
I just got 4.
You just got 4.
Yeah. October 9th.
Damn, congrats, bro.
Thanks, man.
4 years is gangster.
It's crazy. I can't believe it. It's really like, I never would have thought, you know?
Yeah.
Never would have thought.
Well, I remember you like didn't think you're an addict.
Up until recently. I still didn't think I was an addict, you know? Yeah. I really just thought that I met some bad people, you know, that because I've always kind of tried to keep my shit together to some extent until I didn't, you know? And even then, I
almost used to think that maybe you weren't because, you know, when you first got clean, there was that period of time and then like you stopped going to meetings and then like you kind of lived like this normal life in college and like we kind of lost touch. And then I was like, maybe it's normal now, you know, who knows?
Right.
And then I would hear that you were just going to a bunch of like Fish concerts and stuff.
Right.
But I wasn't really hearing that you were like really bad on drugs until like the end.
Yeah. It just got gradually worse, you know?
As it does.
Like it just got gradually worse. And I remember you telling me, because I was like super vocal about, you know, after I tried to get clean in like 2009 and then I was down here, it was like a summer or whatever, and I moved back to school in Tallahassee. And I was very vocal about, hey, I think I'm going to use, like, I think I'm going to get high. And I talked to you about it and I, you know, talking to my sponsor at the time about it, who you also know.
Yeah.
And like,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. He was like, okay, bro, just write a pros and cons list and then call me in the morning. And then I did that for like a week. And then I was like, hey, you know, I'm just going to do it. And I did. And I remember you telling me, no, I just smoked. But, that's where I was going with this. So you told me, you were like, hey, you might be okay, but you might not be. But you know that like if you don't get high and you continue going to meetings and continue, you know, working steps and taking suggestions, like you'll definitely be okay. I remember that to this day. I was like, take my chances, you know?
Yeah. I was like, so, I mean, when you use, you don't know what's going to happen. But if you stay clean, your life will continuously get better.
Right.
And you were like, still going to smoke weed. So let's back up. Where are you from?
I was born in Colombia. I come from a good family, good home. I think that was something I always like overlooked until I recently started doing some work on myself. And like there was really some chaos going on in my life from a young age, you know? I remember like it wasn't abnormal for me to be somewhere like eating dinner with family and like, but it'd be a table with like 20 people and then like people with machine guns like around, you know? It wasn't abnormal for me to be somewhere and the place got raided. It wasn't abnormal for like a lot of violence in my home, you know, between like mom and dad and stuff like that. But I just never like
thought that it was abnormal at the time.
I never thought that it was abnormal, and I've always, you know, grown with like my parents loved me. That always made me overlook like the rest of the shit. But it was like really a lot of trauma, you know, growing up really. And it came to a point where one day it was just, I think I was like 8 or 9 at this point. Like we had moved, you know, used to live in like a huge house, and we had moved, and like I was too young to understand, but I knew something was going on. One day I took a call from somebody was calling my dad, and I could hear like this nervousness in their voice, and they're like, hey, well, just tell your dad to call, please. And there used to be like this cargo ship that my dad had in the Amazon River. The workers were kidnapped and the shit got burnt, you know? And then life just went crazy. And my dad was like, all right, we got to get the hell out of here. And so we came to the States, you know, like on a whim.
How old were you?
Like 9.
Okay.
I remember it was Christmas Eve, 1999. And it was like my world really changed, you know? And I remember being a kid in a new environment, not knowing how to speak English. And that shit was like traumatizing for me. It was awful, right? Like it was like,
yeah, because like in America, there's like Spanish kids that are like from here. And then you have kids that are like from Spanish speaking countries. And even in school, they're like not looked at the same, you know?
No, bro. It was like, fucking, it sucked. You know, it sucked. Like you can't communicate with people, you know, and you got to like, I had to like choose my friends based on like who I could communicate with, you know? And I went to a school where it was like, in middle school, that shit was hectic, right? And like kids would try to pick on me. So then I like had to fight.
Where'd you go to middle school?
Plantation Middle.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was like kind of like hood, like, you know, like I couldn't let them like pick on me type thing. So I was just like getting in fights, and I remember like coming home and like crying to my mom, like, I fucking hate it here. I want to get the hell out of here. My parents would work like late, you know, I think their first jobs here, I think like my dad, they both delivered pizzas or some shit. And so I'd just be home alone for an extended period of time after school. So what I would do is I'd watch like TV. I figured out how to watch TV either in Spanish or English with subtitles in the other language.
Yeah, you learn English that way.
That's how I like started learning English and whatnot. And so it was like, after I got through that period of time, when I started really like picking up the language, I was able to kind of settle in a little bit. And shit was like, okay, you know, it was like real normal, like playing sports, you know, like shit like that. It still always felt like that shit always kind of stuck with me, where like I never felt like I fit in. Like I was fat and I didn't know how to speak English, you know? And then I knew how to speak English, but I was like still fat, you know? And so it was like, it was like, I really never felt like I fit in. And that's really all I fucking wanted to do, you know? Like in high school, that's all I wanted to do. And it really happened through like sports, you know? And that's how.
Yeah, you're good.
Right.
Was it wrestling?
Yeah.
Was that the first sport you played, or you played other sports?
No, I played baseball first.
Okay.
And I was pretty good at baseball for a while, but then they cut me from the team because I couldn't lose weight. You know, like I was, yeah. Like I was just like the coach, like I was like on the cusp of like the first year I made it, you know, and then the coach was like, dude, you're good and you've got potential, but like you've got to lose weight type thing. And I didn't. And they cut me. Like I didn't make the team my sophomore year. And so.
Oh, it's a sophomore year.
Yeah, this is not sophomore year in high school, you know? And so I was pissed, and I went to the wrestling coach, and I was like, hey, man, can I just like, because I had friends who had like started wrestling and lost a bunch of weight and shit. And I was like, hey, can I come through and like, I just want to lose some weight. He's like, hell no, you can't. You can come wrestle and be on the team, but like, you can't just like use my gym to work out. And that's how it happened. I got super into it. I was good. I was cutting weight. I was, you know, I fucking slimmed down. I was like 160 pounds, like cutting weight through the week. I remember, and at that time now, it was like high school parties started like happening and stuff. And when I started meeting people through wrestling, that's when I like started getting invited to like parties and meeting football players and meeting like other people that were having like, you know, like the parties at the fucking acre homes and in like Shenandoah and stuff, where like that kind of stuff started going on. But during wrestling season, I was like nothing. It was like no alcohol, no smoking weed or whatever stuff I was doing at the time. It was like strictly
About wrestling.
about wrestling, what it is, what it was. And, that shaped me. I think that like kind of held me together for a while. And then shit, just like being from down here, I think.
Do you remember when you met me? Or like hearing about me? That I was like Kevin's little brother?
Yeah. I think it was like how I really, because Kevin wrestled. Kevin,
My brother
yeah.
wrestled,
And
right?
that's how I
Yeah.
kind of met Kevin. And then what happened was that we were at some party and I was leaving, backing up, and I hit.
I think I remember this. You hit someone, right?
Yeah, I hit your brother's car.
Oh, yeah.
I hit your brother's car, and I was super scared. And he was like, "Hey, man, we'll just have my dad call your dad, and we'll kind of figure it out." And your dad was like, "Well, yeah, just come over for dinner. We'll figure it out,
Yeah.
And that's how I met you.
Yeah.
And I started hanging out with Kevin a lot more, or with your brother a lot more, and we were just doing like kid shit, like smoking weed, skipping school, and like I remember like maybe it was like junior year of high school or something. It was like a new Chili Peppers album came out, and so we would like skip school and smoke weed to go to the water park to listen to it and that type of stuff, like kind of like at the time innocent. I remember like one of our friends, his mom was a school teacher, so we knew that she wouldn't be home during the day, so like we'd just
Party at
go
her
over
house.
there, smoke weed, and like play Halo or something. It wasn't like anything crazy. And then I think like the first like real memory I have of you, it was already starting to get to the point where like your parents were watching like where you were going and who you were hanging out with.
Yeah, so there was a time where my dad was like, you can't leave the house unless you're with Kevin.
Right.
And my brother was like, I don't want him around, like, what the fuck? And then I remember like Kevin being like, man, my fucking brother has to come around everywhere. And I was like, when? Like, what? Like, because I had friends that were even older than my brother.
Yeah.
And I was already doing coke and like other shit. And then I remember like I just started tagging along wherever my brother went. And then I got introduced to like all his friends.
Right. And there was a point, if I remember correctly, that like I think because I was over at your place often, and I would talk to your pops, talk to your mom, and maybe whatever it was, maybe your dad just felt comfortable or whatever. Whereas like if you were like, hey, yeah, no, I'm going somewhere with Santi, they'd be like okay with it.
Yeah,
So
my dad thought it was like in safe hands.
Right. And I
Yeah.
remember my parents were out of town, and
It was
the
like party at the townhouse.
Yeah. I threw that party that ended up like out of control, like way out of control. and you were there, but you called me at like 2 p.m. It's like, hey man, just come pick me up. Let's hang out. I was like, dude, I'm not doing this till like 7 or something, like 8. And you just came to hang out, do coke at my house, and I had that macaw, that huge
my
bird.
God.
Yeah.
That bird was like the worst fucking thing ever.
Yeah. And I didn't understand at the time. Like at that time I was probably a sophomore in high school, and I'd never seen coke until that day,
That's so funny.
Yeah. And you were like,
Oh my
you want to
God.
do something? I was like, no, dude, what the fuck? I was like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, I used to have coke on me like it was cigarettes.
yeah.
It's like nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing weird about it. Like just always had it on me, always doing it. Someone coming to serve. I think I served people up at your.
Without a
Yeah,
doubt.
I remember being there and like cars would just pull up and I would like break them off. And I remember you just being like,
I remember saying like, how are you doing that without a scale? Because I was like, I knew what a scale was used for because I smoked
Yeah.
weed type. And I was like, how are you doing that without a scale? He's like, no, I got it, dude. I could eye out a gram like nothing. And then the dude would call you like, yo, what the fuck? This is
Shit's
0.3.
light as people needed to get skimped.
Yeah, man. But that's what those are like my first memories.
Yeah, I
of you.
remember being in like it's weird now because I'm an adult, but like I remember being in ninth grade serving up kids from Nova that were in college.
Yeah.
And I remember like kids used to come through in like a Benz and stuff, and I would just serve them up or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember like that whole party, like seeing you guys in my mind, I was like, they're still doing like young kid stuff. Like
Yeah.
I thought beer pong was like stupid. I thought like doing like a keg stand was like silly, you know?
Right.
But I still had fun with you guys. I remember just being there.
Well, I just think for more than anything, it was just a place for you to be at where there was no adult supervision
I had
where
nowhere
you
else
could
to go. Yeah. I was like, yo, can you just come get me?
Yeah.
So I could do coke and like my parents would be off my back.
Right.
Yeah, I forget his name, but he was on the wrestling team too. And I remember him waking up in the morning, looking at me, and I was geeked out of my mind. And like, you know, when you do coke, you get super paranoid. And I'd be like doing coke, and the bird would be going, "Paka, paka,"
Yeah.
and I'd just be like, yeah, I'd be tripping.
Like it was like, you know, like crazy. I remember that, and everybody was like, because there was quite a few people that slept there. Everybody kind of like coming to in the morning, waking up, and you like still sitting up on the couch doing
Upright,
coke.
yeah.
Like,
and I remember they were like, yo, Kevin's brother didn't go to sleep last night.
right. But meanwhile, your brother is like throwing up on my bed,
Yeah,
like
wasted.
yeah.
I felt responsible. I was like, at least I'm not hungover.
Right.
I really was like, you guys are the ones who have problems.
Right. And it was like, it was that type of shit that just progressed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think just kind of luck of the draw. It could be, I could say like, oh, it was just because I was hanging around with these type of people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like looking back at it now, being in South Florida at that time, you know, I could
about to
close my
happen.
eyes, haphazardly
yeah.
pick a group of 10 out of 100 people, and at least 6 of those people are hooked on blues type thing. You know,
For sure.
it was just that type of thing where like,
Especially later on.
right. One time I remember,
Oh yeah, so I remember like the transition. I remember like we'd have parties at like that townhouse, and then I remember like we'd have parties like at Jimmy's house or whatever. And then I remember like when it would transition to like that other house you guys lived into, like the bigger house.
right. I think there was a shift when like, I'll never forget. It was like at one of these the acre homes that we moved there, and my parents had everyone over for, I think it was like New Year's Eve. Everybody hung out. I got real drunk, and in the morning, Jimmy was there with his girlfriend. Like showed up. They woke me up, and they're like, "Hey, let's head up to Sebastian and like surf or whatever." And I was like, "I gotta ask my parents," type thing. And they're like, "No, we already asked them. Like, I've been talking to your dad.
All
You're
morning.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go." And so we went up there.
Would you surf too?
Not even really. Like
Yeah, I never
was,
surfed either.
No, I was. It was just like a thing. It was like
Chill out,
it was like I got
yeah.
an extra board. Come hang out. I got nothing better to do. And so we went, and then went back to wait at like Jimmy's house. I'm like, dude, what are we waiting on? I'm like, let's just go. And he's like, no. He was picking up like acid or something, and that was like, we went up there, and it was like at night, and we ate acid or something. It was my first time doing really anything other than like weed
and
or
alcohol.
drinking. And we like went to some like Disney hotel that was there, if I could remember correctly, and like walked around the place until they're like, you guys are on camera everywhere. You should leave. And we like slept on the beach and then surfed the next day. And the thing was like that kind of like shifted from like, we don't have to just go somewhere and be like, get a keg and drink. Like we could do this shit. Cool. It started like shifting to that where there would be parties at like Jimmy's house and people weren't drinking. Everybody was just like
On acid.
eating
Mushrooms.
ecstasy and shit.
Yeah,
and
like-
you'd be there like doing coke, same type of shit that like,
Yeah, it started to get more hardcore. And I remember, because even though I had done hardcore drugs and like whatever, there was still like this thing of like, you guys, like I had another group of friends that stopped hanging out with me when I started doing coke. You guys still were like, all right, Brian, like you can bring your coke. It was just like an interesting time because I just remember like a period of time of like, we all did acid for like a year.
Right. And I remember like,
I didn't even want to do it, but Jimmy is so loving and nice. He just give it to everybody.
Correct.
He was like definitely born in like a different era. He was, even when he would buy coke, he'd be like, hey man, you need this more than I do. And I'd just be like, hell yeah. It was like this weird hippie friendship that we all had.
Right.
And even though like that was like my only real experience with friendships, because up until that point, I was just like a scumbag drug addict type of person. I was just forced to hang out with you guys, and like we started to become like friends.
Yeah, and and I've lost touch with a lot of
Yeah.
them. But even like at that point in my life, I can look back and through the experiences and through everything, really say like that was true friendship.
Yeah,
you know,
that
it
was
was
cool.
it was very cool. And
Yeah.
and I remember like progressing to where like we were still doing the same shit, and then at this point now you're like, we're worried about Brian type thing. You know, like this isn't
Yeah.
turning out well. I remember Jimmy being like, "Dude, you just need to eat acid, and you'll be good."
At one point, he was like, "Look, I'm gonna get you off drugs, and like if you just do enough acid, like you'll come out of it."
Right.
And a part of me was like, "No way!" But I'm still gonna do the acid. And I remember, like, I swear to God, I did acid every day for like a month.
Right. Remember we
I
went.
used to do it at school, and used to be like, "How are you eating?"
Yeah. Well, yo, dude, I did it. I did it at yeah, because one time,
Yeah,
ate a tab
that's
one
so
time
funny.
to go to school, and our teacher that we know, I know she knew, and I freaked out. And what she did was she said, "How are you doing here?" And she wrote me. There was like a art display in the library or whatever, and she wrote me a pass to go. It was like the coolest thing. It was the coolest thing ever. But remember that time Jimmy got you to eat acid, and we went to the beach, and you got stung by a jellyfish?
Hold up. So wait, this is like a crazy story. So how about when we got the acid? I remember I had like a BlackBerry Pearl. It was like the sickest phone at the time. And you know, Jimmy would get sheets of I don't even know where he got it from, but he got like the sheet of acid, and it had like this hand like this, and it was green. And I took a picture of it on my phone, and like, you know, I would just take pictures of drugs. And I took a picture of it on my phone. And then we're at the beach, and we're laying down, like, and the water's like hitting us, and we're all just like tripping balls. And I remember you're like, "Yo, what if we just crawled out the water like this?" You're just like, "Yo, isn't it crazy how we used to be like little minnows, and then like we started to grow a leg, and then we just like started crawling out of the water,
Crawling out of the ocean.
And I remember being like, "Oh, that's great!" Like just thinking, like, what? Just, you know, how you're just like, we did crawl out of the water one day. How? Imagine the first thing to be like, "Yo, let's leave the water." And then we'd look at this moon and be like, well, when are we going to leave the earth? You know, like just thinking crazy shit. And then I remember I was sitting there and my hand was in the water and we were just like chilling. And I remember being like, "Man, my hand hurts." And you're like, "Yeah, sometimes acid will intensify certain feelings." I was like, "No, my hand is like really hurting me." And you were just like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I just like was just sitting there. I was just like fighting through the pain. And then I was like, "Man, it really hurts." And I lifted my hand out of the water. And there was a giant jellyfish just attached to it. And I was like, "Oh my God, what the fuck?"
Yeah.
And I remember somebody was like, "Oh, stand back, I'll piss on it."
Because it was just you, Jimmy, your brother, and I. So it was one of us three.
So I was like, "Bro, stand back, I'll piss on it." And then I think my brother was like, "You idiots, like the fucking lifeguard has ammonia."
Yeah.
Which I guess is why people pee on jellyfish
Right.
things. And then I remember my hand was like all fucked up. And I took a picture of it. And then like the next day I like looked back at my pictures and there was like the picture of the hand on the acid and the picture of the hand with the thing. And then acid to me was like, honestly, I didn't feel nothing when I did acid. Like I would feel like trails and like I would get stuck on stupid, but like acid just became like smoking cigarettes.
Right. And I remember that vividly after that experience leaving the beach. And I think we all had eaten, I don't know, maybe like 2 tabs or something, where I was like, I know what I was feeling and I was like tripping. And so was Jimmy and so was your brother. And you were like, "Yo, Jimmy, let me see that sheet. Let me get more." And we were like, "Yo, you don't need more." And it was like, No. Yeah, dude, I could totally take more. And
I remember
you
looking at me.
It,
I remember you looking at me like, this kid is just fucked.
Yeah, I was like, that's exactly what I thought.
I remember you just being like, "No, Brian, we already took the acid. Like, we're all fucking fine." And I'm like, "Jimmy, I need more acid."
Right.
And everybody was like, "No, Brian, you don't.
Right.
It's not Coke."
Right. And because that's not really how acid works anyway, right? Like, like after, like if you take 2 hits and you take 2 later, like it's not going to have that same effect type thing.
I don't know.
And we didn't know that as kids, you know? I didn't know that as a kid because we were 16-year-old kids. At least we were. You were probably like 14. Yeah.
Were you at the 311 concert?
No.
You didn't go, right?
I was already in college for that.
Okay.
And I heard the whole thing and because I remember when I had left my iPod in your brother's car.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, Kev, because I was home and I was like, hey, can I come grab my iPod or whatever? And he was like, yeah, dude, Brian threw it out of the window of the car. And I was like, what the fuck? At that point, I didn't even care about the iPod anymore. I was like, what the fuck happened? You know? And he went into that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but like that's like my last experience with acid. But like up until that point when I had done acid, it was just like fun and whatever. And like from the second that acid hit my mouth, like I started to trip balls.
Yeah.
Harder than I've ever tripped before. It just felt totally different. And then I smoked weed on top of it. And I never smoked weed. I got super paranoid. And that's when I got tasered by the cops, butt naked, punched Jimmy in the face, spit in Jimmy's face.
Right.
And then on the way home, I remember thinking this is a dream. Like I must be dreaming. At first I thought I was like on the Truman Show and I was like, everyone's a paid actor. And I remember just like pushing people and getting into like fights or whatever. And then on the way home, I was like, what is this? And I'm like, this is a dream. I need to wake up. And I remember your brother was like, my brother was like messing with your iPod. And I just grabbed it and threw it out the window.
Right.
And it was like, see, it's just a dream. And then I opened the door and tried to jump out.
I remember. That's what
and my brother was like grabbing me, pulling me in. As he's driving. Yeah. I remember the next day I woke up thinking it was all a dream. And then I remember looking at my wrist and both my wrists were like cut from the handcuffs.
Right.
And that's the last time I did acid.
Yeah, no, that shit's crazy. And I remember thinking like, I don't even understand because we had done it so many times that I remember like thinking like I didn't even understand how that could be an effect.
Yeah.
And that should actually, it happened to me later on in life.
You had a bad trip?
At Madison Square Garden, seeing fish, and I had what used to be a vial, and there was acid in it, but it was down to like the last couple drops or whatever, the last few doses, and so I just put water in it. I drank half of it, and I gave the other half to my girl. And everything just spun out of control.
From like a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was insane because I don't know, I guess the reclaim or whatever, everything that was on it, on the vial.
Did she trip hard too or not really?
Absolutely, but she kept her shit together. I remember there was a time, and normally it would take like 30, 45 minutes for it to hit. This shit was like
instant,
5 minutes after, and at that point I knew something was up, and we sat down and we were just kind of hugging. I'd been to Madison Square Garden to see Fish a bunch of times. This was her first experience, and she didn't want to do it. I was like, no, this is gonna be okay. And eventually, I had to like go seek help. Like they took me to the hospital. Like medics came and got me.
Really?
Took me to the hospital, and
at least you didn't start getting naked.
No, I didn't start getting naked. They took me. It was like the short bus for like the short bus ambulance because it was like me and like 5 other people that had gotten fucked up at the show, and we went.
5 other people?
Yeah. It was like, I guess there's so many people there, they just fucking bust them out and ambulances to the hospital. It sucked. But once I got to the hospital, I was fine. And I was like, all right, can I go? And they're like, no, your heart rate's like way up. You need to just chill out.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, like going back. So it was that type of shit. And we started kind of like seeing, your decline. And our shit was just like normal, keep going. And then eventually shit just started getting worse and worse.
I think the pills got introduced. So like right around like 14, I went to military school. And then like on one of my trips back from military school is when I got introduced to crack and oxys and roxys and stuff.
Right.
And that's when like I think there was still a period of time you guys still hung out with me.
No, absolutely. And I think that's when I started becoming like curious about it, because now it not only was it because I think there was like a period of time where you were doing it but you weren't like
out in the open with it,
right? And I knew other people were doing it, like of our friends and stuff, and I was like, man, I kind of want to try it, And I remember our friend whose mom had like a ton in her cabin or whatever. We were just like at someone's house, and he was like, hey, anybody want one? I was like, yeah, I'll try it. And I remember actually
talking about Roxy's
Blues, yeah. And I remember your brother, We didn't. We went to like there's like a billiard club or something at the mall, like at Sawgrass. And I remember your brother saying like, "Dude, I can't believe you just did that," type thing. And
He's such a good kid. I remember doing coke, and my brother would be like playing Counter-Strike, and I remember just being coked up watching him play, and he would just be like, "All right, Brian, like you don't got to do that much." And I was like, "Yeah, like you do a line too." And my brother would be like, "No," and I just would be like, "Who says no to a line? Like, what do you mean?" Like I just couldn't understand it. And there was times where like my dad would scream at me and yell and break shit and say like, "You're grounded forever," da 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 da. And like the next day, my dad would be like, "You can only leave the house with Kevin." I'm like, "Okay." And then like I'd be like, "Kevin, let's go to this gas station real quick." And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Come on, let's just go to this gas station." And then I'd get served up like an 8-ball and like get back in the car and start doing it. And he would just be like, "We literally just had this conversation at home with your dad." That, like he couldn't understand like how I just had like total disregard for like any type of structure.
Right. And I think it was like from that time when I was given my first blue, and this is now towards the latter end of senior year of high school. So I was getting ready. I think I'd already been accepted in college. I was going to FSU, and every now and then,
Yeah, you guys were seniors and I was a sophomore.
right? Every now and then, I was doing, I was doing blues, but it wasn't anything crazy. And that was right around the time too where you like conned me into, going to pick up crack. I remember one time before that, you asked me for a ride, and I was like seeing this girl at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, can you give me a ride somewhere?" I was like, "Sure." I'm with her or whatever. He's like, "Yeah, it's fine, whatever." And we went somewhere. You went in a building and then came running out, like dashing out. Got in the car and you're like, "Yo, go, 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 go."
Oh, I robbed somebody?
You said you were joking, but you scared the fuck out of me. And I started driving, and I'm with like this girl in the car. That's like, who the fuck
a total
are your
normal
friends?
person.
Yeah. And then the other time was he's like, con me into taking you to like some Walgreens and
on 441.
On 441, and you got handed a brown bag, and I was in my dad's truck, and all of a sudden you whipped out a crack pipe.
Yeah, I remember being...
And that was the first time that I had heard it from people, but I was like, there's no shot. Because it was like... You
didn't believe it?
No, because it was hard to comprehend
that someone
was smoking crack, and they were... Let alone fucking in 10th grade, just in high school at all,
Yeah, because there was like rumors of me doing it, and then there was like rumors of like some other people doing it, but like I don't know, like I wasn't that vocal about it, And I remember like needing a ride, and like I went in and like got it, and I remember getting the crack, and I think I had told you it was gonna be coke, and when you saw that it was a crack pipe, you were like, "No, Brian."
Right. Because at that time, I think that's how you got me. Because at that time, I was like, I had done coke, so I was like, "Oh, coke, bet, yeah, we can do some, yeah."
I'll take it, go get coke,
right?
Yeah. And then I remember you were like, "What the fuck?" You like flipped out, and you're like, "You're not smoking that in my dad's truck." And I remember just looking at you like, like I'm sorry, but like
you were like, "Bro, it's all good. I'll just go to the back seat." And you just jumped over. I'm driving, and you jumped from the front seat to the back seat, and then you lit it. And I could not. I was so pissed. I could not comprehend. I'm like, "Bro, not only is this fucked up, but I like asked you to please not do it." Like I couldn't process that in my head,
I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, now I get it. Yeah, no shit. It's like
you're asking something really ridiculous. Like, now that we're both adults here, all right, can you just say that's pretty fucking ridiculous to ask somebody?
Right. It was like, yeah, that was a tall order, It was like it was a big ask.
It's almost disrespectful to me.
Correct. No, and I totally understand that now. But I remember.
I remember what you said, and I'll never forget it. I remember you were driving, and you looked at me smoking it, and you were like, "Wow, it's just like Dope Sick Love."
Yo, I had just seen that shit. I had just seen that documentary, which is crazy.
I'm so grateful to be clean. It is so crazy hearing this. Yeah. Because like sometimes like, I don't know, we live our lives and like, I've been clean 13 years.
Right.
But there's not too many people who have seen me smoke crack. It almost doesn't seem real sometimes.
No, I mean, it's nuts, right? And I'm just equally as grateful, right? That like we get the opportunity to do shit like this and reminisce and talk, because not in a million years did I think
13 years ago this shit wasn't funny.
This shit was not funny 13 years ago. As a matter of fact, when you smoke crack in the truck, I said, fuck this. You're getting out of the car, thinking like that was an ultimatum. Like, oh shit, we're out all the way in fucking 441. He's not gonna have a ride. He'll probably be like, okay, I'll stop until I get home. You got out in a dark parking lot, Walgreens or somewhere
like
else.
11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and just started walking away from the car, just fucking hitting the stem. And at that point, I knew, all right, that's it. And like, I got to cut it off with Brian. And I think that was really like one of our last time like hanging out.
And I remember you were like, bro, if you don't stop, I'm just going to drop you off right here. And I remember just being like, all right, just pull up. I'll jump out, you know? It's crazy to think because at that time, in my mind, I still thought I wasn't really that bad.
Right.
Like to you, you were probably like, you're the worst fucking human being around.
Right.
But to me, in my mind, I was like, I'm not that bad. Like I really didn't think I was that bad until probably a year later. A year later is when I started to be like, fuck. Because there was a time where even Jimmy wouldn't talk to me.
Right. And that kind of...
I remember you guys all stopped talking to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that kind of checks out because... You know, so that was like senior year of high school, and and I moved away to college, and after my first year in college, which like college, you know, I went, and it turned out like it started there, just progressively getting worse and worse. You know, I remember my first
with blues, right?
No, not blues at that point. At that point, it was just like partying. Drinking, doing coke. You know. I remember like my first summer at school, my first summer semester, I lost like 5 phones. I got arrested and I was like, it's cool. I can keep this from my parents. And then I guess my parents started getting like lawyer notices. Yeah. And my mom was like, you're going to have to leave there. You're going to have to come back home type shit. And it just progressively started getting like worse. And then after my first year, I spent the whole summer down here. And at that time, you just heard from everybody like, yeah, Brian's fucked, you know, like he's just fucked. Nobody knew what the fuck. Nobody was talking to you. But then I was down here for that summer and our same buddy whose mom used to get like 4 or 5 different scripts at the time. We started like hanging out, going over there, and she loved me. I've always been like real personable with like parents and really everybody, right? And like, so I would go over there, we'd hang out, they'd let us smoke weed there. His dad would like cook us food and we just hang out and like play video games, like World of Warcraft at the time we were real into, and like steal her pills, you know, for an entire summer. And she had so many that she would never notice. And then I don't know if she noticed or she couldn't fill her script for a couple days. And I remember calling my buddy like, hey, are you sick? You know, like, do you have like a cold or something? And he was like, yeah, dude, it's withdrawals. I was like, what? I didn't know what withdrawals were until the end of that summer. And we thought the best idea was to go to his mom and be like, hey, help. You know, this is what's been happening. She's like, oh, I got you. Here's some Zomas and Xanax and whatever, and you'll be fine. And I went back to school, and it was within like...
Wow, you detoxed?
Yeah, I detoxed, went back to school, and within a week, I got financial aid, and I found out where the fuck I could get them. I got them, and then I was like, hold up. These people are charging $25, $30, and I just gotten this huge financial aid check. It's like, I'm going home for the weekend. I came home for the weekend, and I asked around, and I figured out where to get a bunch. And I went back, and then I just was doing them and had bread. And then we just had this agreement where, you know, we'd meet. I'd drive down to the turnpike. He'd drive up to the turnpike. We'd stop at one of the rest stops, exchange. And then it just got to the point where it was like, fuck it, just mail them to me, you know? And then it just got out of control, right? Where I was like, I remember going to an advisor, like a whatever, the people that help you like pick your classes. Yeah. And she was like, you got a D in psychology last semester? She's like, what is going on? That was what was happening. And I remember thinking at that time, like I remember sometimes getting ready to go to class and sit in my car and having the thought like, I wonder now what it's like to be like, I'd see somebody else getting in their car and leaving and I'd be like, I wonder what it's like to like not have to sit around and wait to have to do something so I can feel good enough to go to class so I can just nod off in class, you know? It was like I started to really understand that my life revolved around this fucking tiny blue pill that didn't allow me to do fucking anything.
Yeah, I remember being on drugs and seeing kids from school excited to go to Starbucks. And I remember just being like, wow, like I couldn't even imagine, like, one, when you're sick, you don't want to eat or drink anything. But I remember just seeing people like wake up in the morning with coffee in their hands and like that was it. That's all they needed in the morning, you know? It's like I couldn't even go to school unless I had pills. And the thing is, like, I was so addicted to Oxys and Roxys because I was doing Oxys before Roxys even came out.
Right.
So it's like there was a time where I was doing Oxys and crack and not telling anybody. I remember smoking crack with somebody, and I was like hardcore addicted to crack, and they were just like doing it just because I felt like doing it. And I remember they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go to Jimmy's house. They're taking prom pictures," and I was like, I don't want to go over there, bro. Do you remember I showed up there?
Yeah.
Bro, I woke up in the morning. I was like, bro, we're going to go cop like $200 worth of crack. We're going to just chill and smoke all day. We're like smoking at the Forest Ridge fucking tennis courts or whatever in his car. And then he's like, hey, let's go over to Jimmy's house. They're taking prom pictures. I was like, motherfucker, I'm not going to no fucking thing where people are doing prom pictures.
Yeah.
And I remember he drove me there and he's like, you're not getting out of the car? I was like, no, dude. Like, I was so geeked up out of my mind. We had like $150 worth of crack still left over. And he went inside and was like, hey guys, I'll take the pictures. And I remember just being in the car and like watching people pull up and like hold hands and like dressed up to go to prom.
And shit. Yeah.
I remember being in the car. One, he didn't leave the keys, so I'm sweating in the car, smoking crack. And I remember that feeling of like, wow, like I am so far removed from normal life.
Right.
Like, I don't ever want to go to prom. I don't think I'm ever going to go to prom. Like, these kids are just like happy to go to prom. And I like, that was like one of my moments where I was just like I'm not normal.
Right. That realization where like you realize it, but you're too far gone at that point to fucking do anything about it.
Yeah, for me to get from here to there is fucking miles away.
And it, being mad and annoyed and just like puzzled as to how did I get to this point where like I can't even go to class now, you know? And something happened where like my roommates were worried about me because at this point now it's just all fucked. I think they like called help, like an ambulance or some shit to say. I think I was just like nodded out and whatever. And I went to the hospital and the doctor was like, you have, you know, they made me do like a 5-panel test or whatever. And they're like, yeah, man, you like testing positive for fucking everything. Like you need help. Something's wrong with you. And I somehow conned my mom into, they let her, she's got really good friends that lived in Tallahassee or like a really good family friends, some shit. And they let them come pick me up and like prayed for me and took me and took me back to my apartment, you know? And I went right back to my apartment and my roommates are home and I just fucking went in the room and I crushed up a bunch of Roxys and I went at it and I didn't come out for a long time. And so they were like, not what the fuck. And now this time, now I'm Baker acted, you know? And this is in 2009. And I'm at a place where I'm Baker acted. I can't fucking leave. And they don't give out anything to detox.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I couldn't even smoke cigarettes. It was miserable. It was really fucking miserable. My mom came up and it was like in front of a therapist. And he's like, is there something you want to say to your mom? And I was like, Mom. And that was the first time I said I was an addict. I was like, yeah, Mama, I think I'm addicted to pills. And at that point, you had gotten clean. And and my cousin, I had a cousin who was doing really bad and was like in prison due to that, due to being hooked on blues and like stealing shit and whatnot. And I was just dumbfounded at the fact, I'm like, I just fucking saw a really good friend of mine ruin his life. I saw my cousin ruin his life, and I couldn't do anything different. Like I knew, by this point, I knew what was going to end up. I'd already gone through withdrawals. I knew what the fuck was going to happen, but I did it anyway. And I just remember being defeated. Like it sucked. And I remember my mom and at that point, I was like worried, like, oh, you know, I gotta be able to get into the business school, to go to school for what I want to do, whatever. My mom was like, fuck that. We're going to go talk to the dean. I was like, hey, I need to go take care of some shit. He's like, go take care of some shit. It's fine. And I remember driving down from Tallahassee home. And by this point, people were saying you were clean, but nobody really knew if you were clean or if you weren't clean. You couldn't get like a straight answer from somebody. I remember like reaching out to your brother, and he was like, he seems to be doing all right, but I think maybe he just needs to like eat mushrooms or something.
That's like typical brother.
Yeah, man. And
he would tell me that too. He would be like, I think you just need to do mushrooms. I'm like,
right.
Kevin, I don't need to do mushrooms.
Yeah,
like,
I think I was like, I think we're way beyond the scope of mushrooms at this point, you know? Like I think, yeah, we're beyond that. And I remember reaching out like, hey, here's what's going on. I'll be home. I need help. And because I think at that point I had seen you post like a key tag on Facebook or something. And
yeah, I remember you were like, I remember you posted that you had 90 days clean. Even till today, like I still think about that because like sometimes like when I do like the podcast or like talk about recovery, like sometimes I do get sick of it. Like to be honest with you, like sometimes like I don't want to be on Instagram talking about recovery so much, but like I have seen proof that like being vocal about recovery really has impacted a lot of people around me. And like when I got clean, I didn't know anyone that got clean. So I didn't even know that this shit even was possible. And I remember you were like, dude, like I saw that you posted you had 90 days clean, and I was just like, no way.
Right. That saved my life at that point, to be completely honest, Brian, because I didn't know. I was in so much pain. Much like you, I didn't know because it was only just like hearsay, like, yeah, Brian's clean, Brian's not. But you were the only person I knew out of all of our friends that like had gotten clean maybe. And I didn't know what a 12-step program was.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the fuck it was. I had no idea that that was an option. And I remember reaching out for help. We were driving back kind of late at night, and you were like, I'll be at your house at 7 a.m. And sure enough, dude, you were at my house at 7 a.m. And took me to like a state-ran facility because I didn't have insurance. And that's how it happened. And I was just so sick of shit that like...
Do you remember you called me from the psych ward? Do you remember that? Yeah, I remember you calling me from the psych ward.
That's crazy. And I think it was because, you know, looking back on it, like that was like the only like... hope this therapist is telling me I can't smoke weed again. I shouldn't be smoking weed, you know? Fuck no. I need to like reach out to somebody that's like really has figured it out type thing, you know? And that's just the type of shit that happened. And I remember just like going to meetings every day, and I didn't have a car. Like my parents didn't trust me with a car, and you would pick me up every day and we'd go to a meeting. Shout out to like, you know, West Broward Club and like the best meeting ever, and you know,
and the 10 o'clock.
And the 10 o'clock. We'd go to the midnight.
Yeah, we'd go to the BME, you, me, Scap,
man, Cap.
Pat Cap.
Yeah. Just
Austin. Yeah, all those people.
Austin, all those people. I did not think that what I was about to walk into was a bunch of 19 to 25-year-old kids just like having a blast, kind of really is what it turned out to.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like my whole concept of the 12-step program was like these old people sitting around in like empty like basketball courts of like high schools and shit.
Yeah, like what you see in movies.
Like what you see in movies.
Empty gym with a whiteboard in the back.
Like a whiteboard in the back and fucking everyone drinking some stale-ass coffee and it's like 6 people there. And it's like in South Florida, it's like, bro, I remember going to my first meeting and there was like kids with mohawks on skateboards and longboards and someone battle rapping in the parking lot and like someone like blasting rap music out of their car and like just people hanging out and having fun. And like the meeting was so fucking interesting and chaotic.
Bro, I remember...
And a lot of young people, like so many young people.
I remember people would make beats and would take it to like Steve, rest in peace, because he had the music here and be like, yo, listen to this shit. And he'd like listen to it and like take out his guitar and play something. And then somebody would start freestyling and shit. And that went on. The meeting ended at 11 and people would be there at 12:30 at night, you know, 1 a.m.
Hanging out in the parking lot,
just chilling, you know, going to the midnight meeting, that had like the reclining, the couches everywhere, and people were just smoking cigs inside. Like,
I mean, and like honestly, that was my life for years.
Yeah,
and then we played karaoke.
Right,
I remember we did. I grew up so fast. I just thought like anything outside of like the norm was so corny. And I remember thinking like I would never do karaoke. And like you do karaoke one time, you're like, oh, that was whatever. And then you do it a second time, and then you're like, yo, karaoke's fun,
Right,
you know?
right.
And you're
Yeah.
like singing karaoke with your friends, and like it was like I feel like I missed out on so much of being a kid that like when I got clean, like it was the first time in my life I had like real friends that didn't really involve around drug use, because even at the time I still had this like low self-esteem that like, well, if I didn't have drugs, no one really would want me around.
Right. And at that point, it was really kind of a no-brainer, right? It was like, all right, the meeting's done. Do you go home or go fucking drink Red Bull and sing karaoke?
Yeah,
And like,
at Beyond
there
Billiards
might
and
be
have fun.
girls
And there
there,
might be
you know?
chicks there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it was really a no-brainer. And so that's just how it went. And the summer went by. I think, I got like 90 days down here. And then I went back to Tallahassee and I was, going to meetings up there. And right around about like
Remember
you guys came
visit
up
you?
when I got
Yeah.
6 months and you spoke at a meeting up
Yeah.
there. And it felt so tight to be in with these people it was like a completely different scene. And it was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is the type of shit that like where I come from, it's like young kids and like I know other people, like it was just
clean
it was
time.
yeah, it was so
Yeah.
tight. I
It
remember
was interesting because like I was always like the leader to be like the most fucked up kid. And then in recovery, it's like Scap used to sponsor me, and like he relapsed, and then like he was living a halfway, and it was like Jamaica and like Pat and like you. I was the youngest still,
Right.
but I had the most clean time.
Yeah.
And I remember I had like the most clean time. I had a sponsor. I was like working the steps. And it's like we would go to meetings and you guys were like, oh, Brian's going to go speak,
Right.
And it just felt like, I felt like for the first time in my life, I was influencing people in a positive way.
it was exactly
Yeah.
right, I think, and to me, I think that just felt so I was like, these dudes are really driving 8 hours to come hang out and
Yeah.
like hanging out
For your
is we're
6
about to
months.
go to a meeting.
Yeah.
And I remember your car got towed from my complex and then we got it back and then it was time for you to leave and you were like, bro, I don't really got money for gas. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, I gotcha. We'll figure it out. And it
Yeah.
was just really fucking cool. And I lost sight of that.
Yeah.
And it was simple, right? I just stopped fucking going
You
to
made it
meetings.
to like 9 months, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I stopped going to meetings and I kind of touched a little bit earlier. Like I just said I wanted to use and I talked through it with you and with Carl, whatever. And boom, all of a sudden now I'm like smoking weed. And it was like that for a little, just smoking weed and drinking. Then all of a sudden, just progress. And somehow I was able to make it through school. Like I was somehow still really interested in being good in school and finishing, so like even though towards the end was when I like
How long did it take you to start doing blues again?
I think if that happened, it was probably like a year and a half,
Okay.
and it started happening like up in Tallahassee.
And that's kind of what I try to explain to people. It's like people think like if you drink, you're gonna go do a blue, and it's like, hey, dude, like
Right.
it might not be 6 months from now, it might not be 6 years from now, but I've been clean almost 14 years, and everyone I know that comes into the program and leaves the program, I see a lot of them go back to using hardcore drugs that ruin their life. And it might not be right away, but eventually,
Right.
I would say 99% of people I know either develop a problem with alcohol or go back to the drugs that they were doing
Yep.
anyways.
Eventually, it just happened. That's been my experience since I got clean this time and seeing, and not just seeing it in other people, just in myself, right? Like, okay, I would do it and be like, oh my God, I cannot believe I just did that. I'm not doing it. And then I wouldn't, right? And, it would just be like, going to concerts out of town, doing acid, whatever. By this time, I had done an internship and got a full-time offer after school. So like my last 2 semesters, I was really just chilling while people were like having to go to like job fairs and stuff to try to find something. I was just chilling, and I was just like doing coke. Every now and then I'd do blues, and it was just progressive and, progressed until I had moved to Tampa and I was working and we were doing blow, and then we went back to somebody's house and I was asking for a Xanax so I could go to sleep, and they're like, no, I got Dilaudid. And I was like, that will work. And then
And you ate it, snorted it?
I snorted it. And then at that time, I was
clean, but I remember seeing the transition from Roxy to Dilaudid.
right. Yeah, because it was some like they were a little bit cheaper now.
Dilaudid's were.
Dilaudid's a little bit cheaper than blues, and to be honest, at that time it was just more readily available, at least in Tampa where I was, than like blues.
Down here too. Yeah.
And I had my first job out of school. Like my dream, I could have never imagined ending up at the company I ended up. Right? It's like every kid, right? Every kid that goes to school for the major that I went to school for, that's where they want to end up. And I did that. And I don't know how the fuck I did it, but I did it. And now I'm like making really good money for fresh out of school after just like living off of fucking scholarships and student loans. I was like getting a fat check every 2 weeks. And I did this Dilaudid and I was like, game on. You know, then I texted him the next day like, yo, can you give me a number or whatever? And then it just went on like that. And it just, you know, got worse and worse and worse until, you know, eventually, you know, one point it was actually with Scap. He was there. I don't know why he was in Tampa, but he was there. Started hanging out every now and then. And I was like, hey, do you know anybody? I think my guy wasn't picking up or something. Or I called several people. Nobody's picking up. And he was like, nah, but I know where I can get, you know, heroin. I was scared, honestly. At that point still, I was like, really? He's like, yeah. And that's when it really all went downhill. And this is probably 2012. So it was about 3 years.
Did you
after
ever
I tried
do
to get clean.
Crack, or was it just opiates at that point?
Crack came like later on down the line. You know, it was like
it's so crazy to me, bro. It's like so wild because like I seen you like charismatic, smart, good family, well mannered, like did good in school, like everyone liked you. So like even when I would hear these stories of you, I couldn't really picture it. You know what I mean? Because I remember you looking at me like, get the fuck out of my car.
Right.
You know? And then when you got clean, like, yeah, you were doing blues, but, you know, you got clean. You know, I just always had like love for you and like always like imagined that you would like just do good and live like a normal life.
Right.
And then when I had heard that you were like on heroin, I was like, I don't think Santiago would even be in the same room as heroin. You know what I mean?
No,
I remember just thinking like, bro, he would run, you know?
Dude, and that's how I like grew up my entire life, you know, and try to get clean the first time in like 2009. I remember that was something like I'd be at a meeting and it was like, this dude's talking about, you know, shooting dope behind a dumpster and like robbing his entire family and being homeless and then fucking until like.
And you would be like, whoa, that's a little crazy.
Yeah, I'd be like, damn, that's nuts. Like I was just, you know, spending my extra scholarship money on blues type thing, you know, and it just progressed, man. And it got to the point where, you know, now I'm in Tampa, now I'm shooting dope, working an office job. Shit just, you know, 1 + 1 was no longer 2. Like it no longer made sense. And my parents started, you know, kind of catching up to it where it was like, you're working this really good job, but you can't make rent. And you're having to ask us for money for rent sometimes. And like, that's how it went until, you know, I remember I went to work one time and I was high and, you know, the partner called me into his office and he's like, hey, are you okay? He's like, leave your laptop here, go home. Somebody's going to call you. And it was basically like them telling me like, you need to go to treatment, right? But, you know, it's like at this point, it's like somebody from HR calls you and they're like, and I remember they were just like, yeah, everything's good. You just got to go, you know, go to this appointment. And I get to the appointment and it's like a psychiatrist or something, but I get to her off. And at that point, I'm so delusional that I don't know what's happening. Like I can't see it coming. I feel like maybe like they're just gonna talk to me or something. And I get to the psychiatrist.
Maybe they think you're depressed.
Correct. And I look on the walls and there's like pictures of like Xanax and like signs of drug use, you know, and like shit like that. And I was like,
in that voice.
Oh, right. And I was like, oh, hell no. You know, I walked right out of there and I called the guy that set up the appointment. I was like, hey, man, I can't do it. And then somebody else called me and they're like, hey, I hope everything is okay. If you can't do that, you have to resign. Everything's okay. And we're not firing you, but you have to resign. And I was like,
that makes me sad because like owning like a drug and alcohol rehab and like knowing how like FMLA work, Like, there should be somebody in a company that knows how to deal with having an employee that struggles with substance abuse, because there's a way to go about it that's not humiliating, that
Right.
gets the person help, that actually retains the employee and
Right.
saves the company money, you know?
Well, and that's what they tried to do.
Yeah.
They really tried. And I just wasn't having it.
You're like,
I
no.
wasn't ready to stop. And so I resigned. And I told my parents, because it was a really like kind of high stress job, a lot of hours. And I, came out with the excuse that like, I can't do this anymore. I'm depressed. It's ruining my life. I'm quitting and I'm moving back home. And my parents were like, great. We're happy to have you. Like, maybe, you're maybe doing something to change. But that turned into just
Using at home.
Yeah, using at home, cashing out whatever money I had in a 401k, conning my parents, for money, and then just going to Overtown. It just got progressively worse and
So
worse.
what's interesting is that I would imagine that the people that didn't leave South Florida that we grew up with are all doing the same thing,
Yeah.
which is like crazy to me, because like I got clean.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I got clean, and like I still remember being like the one of the group that was like the biggest fuck up,
Right.
And it's like the longer I stayed clean, like I always thought I was a fuck up, and I never met nobody else to go to 12-step meetings or anything. So I always felt like I was just the one to end up like a fuck up.
Right.
And a drug addict. And like I knew I was a drug addict, but I started to see kids that we grew up with that showed no signs of addiction growing up, that got good grades, that never got in trouble. And it wasn't until their mid-20s that they started out of nowhere. It's like, so-and-so's a heroin addict. You're like, what?
Right.
And in South Florida, it was like pills.
Yeah.
It's like this person didn't start doing Roxy's until they were 22. And at 25, they're a heroin addict.
Yeah. And
Because Roxy's aren't available, so then they do a Dilaudid, and then they shoot Dilaudid, and then now they're doing heroin.
right. And now you're at the point where like now it's the old tale. You find out, well, hold up. It's either 25 for this or I can get these for, 5 or 10 a bag. And I'm good off one for a little bit until you're not, until and it progressed. And I remember one time I was driving back with somebody else from Overtown on 95, and it was deadlocked traffic, and I couldn't wait. So I shot up on a highway on 95, and I overdosed. That was the first time I overdosed, and I remember waking up in the back of the ambulance and thinking like, so I could die anytime, like
That's the first time you thought of that. Yeah.
Right. I was like, that was the first time where it became that real.
Yeah.
I was like, I could die any moment. And now somebody else had taken the car, whoever's driving, the cops had let him take the car. And so now I'm at the Hot Jackson Memorial, and they're like, okay, you're good to go. And I'm like, how am I going to get home? He's like, do you have insurance? I was like, yeah. So they sent me in an ambulance home. And I got dropped. I was like, had him stop outside of the cul-de-sac, like down the street so nobody saw it. And I walked up, and then I was so emotionally shaken up from the experience that I told my parents. The reason why I told them is because I was like, hey, this happened. I don't want to do this anymore. Can I have some money so I can get Suboxone? And I ended up buying a bunch of Suboxone, which I then ended up selling to continue doing dope. And that just continued to happen.
It's crazy because like I remember when you were like trying to get clean, I was like, why doesn't he just call me?
Right.
I remember thinking that the whole time, like bro, if he really needs help, like why don't you just call me?
I was ashamed, like I didn't understand, like I didn't know then, even after having had some experience.
Because I had no idea you were that bad.
Right.
I had no idea. I don't know. I think like I started to hear about it, but you were already in treatment.
Yeah, that was later on down the line when, before I finally made it back to treatment, I overdosed at a friend's house, the same friend who gave my first blue, and him and his mom who we used to use with, was just leave me out in their front yard, call the cops and say, hey, there's somebody we don't know in the front yard.
Get the fuck out of here.
I promise. And I came to...
Wow.
I came to before, as the paramedics were pulling up. And I tried to get out of them, like, taking me. I'm like, I'm fine. But they took me anyway. My dad came to the emergency room, and I just don't even know what to say. I remember that, there was this nurse taking care of me. And all I could think about was, damn, that dope was fire. I just did too much. I came home, so that was one night. I came home that morning, and I immediately hit up my buddy, but I at this point I wasn't able to leave the house because my parents just weren't gonna let me leave the house. And I left money in the mailbox. He came, got it, went, copped, came and dropped it off. And
what a nice guy. I would never do that.
Right? Right? And it was like because it felt like we wrestled together. We had such a it was weird, you know. We kind of looked out for each other, but then, you know,
that's like how me and Jeremy were. Me and Jeremy were like that.
Right. But like if he nodded out, I would steal one. And if I nodded out, he would steal a bag type thing. You know, it was like a gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, you don't fall asleep around someone.
Right. And I got that and I went to my girl's house. She lived with her parents at the time. Throughout this, somehow she was still with me. Like I was hiding all this shit. And like she never knew about any of my overdoses. And I went over there. And I overdosed in her bed. Thankfully, she was up. They called the paramedics. They took me, and it was a different hospital.
Is this pre-fentanyl?
No, hell no. It can't
be.
No,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, is this before fentanyl? I was like, is this fire dope or is this fentanyl?
No, it's just fentanyl.
It's fentanyl.
Yeah. And picked up by the paramedics, I go to, and now her parents were home. So they came to the hospital. Now they know. Now they came to the hospital. And even though it's a completely different hospital, I guess some of these nurses are on rotation. And it was the very next day, and this nurse goes, "What the fuck? It's you again?"
Oh my God.
And my family heard that and was like, "It's the second time in 2 nights?"
Wow, it was 2 nights?
2 nights in a row.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And at that point, I asked my dad for help. I was like, I don't want to die. I need. And I remember her dad asking me, "Why do you do it?" And my only response was, that shit just feels so good. You know, I swear to God, that was my response.
Just like, oh,
yeah.
That shit just be feeling so warm.
Yeah. I was like, I can't help
Get the fuck out of here.
I swear to God, it's funny.
That shit just feels so good.
He'll listen to this sometime probably and be like, what the fuck, you know? Because I can't imagine fucking some asshole dating his daughter and saying heroin just felt so good I can't stop, you know? And I went to treatment, dude, with like, I really wanted to get clean. I really did. Like, I really wanted to stop. I wanted my life to end. At this point, I hadn't been working for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and I was a low life and I didn't have anything going for me in my life. And I just really wanted to stop. I was really fucking tired of deceiving my parents to get money, of deceiving everybody I was fucking around. I was around to just feel and seem normal, to keep the fucking charade going. And I was really through with it. And I was like, there's just no way. You know, I remember my dad would say shit like, you know, what's really important is that you really made the decision for yourself this time. You really wanted to go. You asked for help. And I come to find out that doesn't mean shit if there's no action behind it, because I had all the fucking intent in the world. I might have gotten out on a Friday. By Sunday morning, I had thought, you know, I can just smoke weed. And by Monday afternoon, I was copping dope. And then it just, the whole cycle fucking started again. And it was just the worst fucking time in my life. You know, it was like pain. I couldn't understand how I'd gotten here. I wasn't good at anything. I couldn't understand how I fucking had the world in the palm of my hands. It felt like, after fucking, you know, getting a degree and getting a job and doing well, and then fucking ending up here, not knowing what to do, having to steal money from my mom's purse, having to fucking ship fake sheets of acid to people that would fucking buy them so I could get money to use and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I try to tell people is like when people take being clean for granted. When I first got clean, I remember hearing the speaker, and he said he was at a convention when they did the key tags, the clean time countdown. One of his therapists at his treatment center was getting a white key tag, and he was like, holy shit, like my therapist used.
Right.
And she held up the white key tag and she was like, don't take this shit for granted. I believe when people get clean, it's like God ordained. Like, I believe when people get clean, it's like a God thing. Especially if you get clean and you just wake up one day and get clean, and then it's just like life's good. Like, people take that shit for granted because it's not always like that. Right. There are people that have gotten clean and they think that they got clean because they decided to get clean. There are people that get clean, use, then are like, okay, I'm ready to get clean again. And then it doesn't happen. Right. That they want to get clean. They're willing to get clean. every ounce of them wants to get clean, and it's not happening.
Right.
And it's just not, and they're just like, I don't get it. Last time I really wanted to get clean, and it's not happening now. And it's like, dude, sometimes you can want to be clean,
Right.
and it's not gonna happen.
And that shit, it gives me chills. Like I could almost, tear up because it makes all the sense in the world. Because if I look at the moment from when I went back to treatment, I was like, I think I went for the first time in like March, and then I ran from like March to like October because my clean date is October 9th. And if I look at all the moments and everything that's happened for me to stay clean, and especially those first few months, it's really by the grace of God. Like it was really God working in my life to be where I am and to get through that period. Because the second time, I was just chilling, I was hiding it. All of a sudden, my girl thought something was up, and she checked my wallet, and I had a bunch of bags in there, and she told my parents. And at this point, my mom was like, I love you, I'm not gonna love you to death, don't call me no more. My dad's like, never again. He's like, you reach out to me if you want me to try to get you into treatment. Other than that, enough. My girl said the same thing. And I remember like she like went to the bathroom, and I like took her phone and like cash at myself some money.
Fire.
Yeah, that shit was kind of tight. I think that was before you used to have to like do the Face ID to send money,
That's crazy.
And
he said he cashed out myself.
And I called an Uber. I walked outside. I fucking got in the Uber. I told somebody to meet me somewhere. I was gonna go cop and then try to figure out my plan. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm doing it. I'm like far from her house now. I'm pulling up to the library that's on Griffin on Griffin and like Nob Hill. And I like get out of the Uber and I look, and my girl has like followed. She's so fucking worried about me that she thinks I'm gonna die, and she's followed me. And I have the person that's gonna take me to go cop there, and it's also a girl that and I get out and I jump in her car, and she's like, what the fuck do I do? I'm like, what do you mean drive? And so now
she was on the podcast.
Correct.
Yeah,
and,
Crystal.
And Crystal's now driving fast as fuck, and we're in like a high-speed chase, and I'm like, she's like, what do I do? I'm like, just try to lose her, like, let's get.
She's like, this is your girlfriend.
Yeah.
You're like, lose this bitch.
Yeah. And so now we end up, finally I gave up, and she drops me off. I get in the car, in my girl's car, super defeated, and at that point, I'm like, I'm either homeless and it's hot as shit. I probably haven't showered in a couple days. I'm like muggy, it's nasty. I'm now sick as fuck. So it wasn't even like, people say like, oh, they're going into treatment and like they go grab a bag and get high and you go in and you're like feeling good for the first day. Like that was not my experience. Like I was sick as a dog, and the entire time I was there, I fucking hated being there, and I wanted to get high, and I threatened to leave like multiple times, and I finally left once, but then I realized I have nowhere to go, so I came back, and now it's like just a constant battle and fucking being rebellious and grooving like fuck you. I'm like as soon as I get the chance to get out of here, I'm gonna use type shit, and like scaring my parents to death, and it was really just the same fucking manipulating tactics that I had now learned and used, and it was like my survival skills to be able to fucking get high.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I talked to you. My dad was all worried, and he called you and he gave me your number. I was able to call you, or you called me. And I remember you saying, and I hate when you do this, and I hate it when you're like, Santiago. and because normally I'm just called Santi, right? And and you're like, Santiago, what's up? And I'm like, I'm miserable, dude. I mean, I'm here. He's like, so what's your plan? What do you And I remember saying some shit like, yeah, man, I just want to get out of here and study for my CPA exam.
Yeah.
And you're like, CPA exam? You're going to die. You're like, you're going to die. So you figure it out. But if you don't do something, you're going to die. Call me if you need anything. And at that point, right, I couldn't go back to my parents' house. I couldn't do anything. I had to. I still didn't want to be clean, but like I had to go to.
Yeah, I remember I
house.
told your dad, I was like, dude, don't let him in the house
Right.
ever. Like he needs to not be in the house for a year. I don't care how good he does or whatever. Like you need to draw that boundary with him.
And they did. And I remember being in a halfway house and not having any money.
Well, you went to treatment, right?
Yeah.
So you went to treatment and then you went to halfway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because when I talked to you, it was in treatment. When I was like threatening to get out of treatment, and so
Oh, really?
yeah. When
Wow.
it was like I was calling my dad, I'm like, "Come fucking pick me up, or I'm gonna leave." And like,
Wow.
my dad reached out to you, and you reached out to me, or said, "Reach out to Brian. Here's his number." Whatever the case was, and I couldn't go back. They drew that boundary with me, and I did not want to stay clean. But like, in order to have a place to stay, I like had to go to meetings.
Yeah, and like sometimes, like, because sometimes people are like, oh, you need to want it, whatever. Like, I mean, it just takes what it takes. Like,
Right.
whether you're forced to do it or not forced to do it, it's like doing push-ups. Like,
Right.
if you want to do push-ups or don't want to do push-ups, you're going to get the same results of the person doing push-ups.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, if you do it anyways, you bring the body, the mind eventually follows. And it's like, sometimes you just got to like do whatever leverage you can use to get the person to do whatever they need to do that's going to be best for their recovery.
That's exactly right, man. And like, because there was things that I knew at some point how to do, but like I'd never made a bed in the last fucking 7 years, right? At one point I made my bed. At one point I did the dishes. I had forgotten how to do any of that. At one point I brushed my teeth, right? At one point I fucking went and got haircuts, but I didn't do any of that. And that shit, it was like real humbling to be in this place. And I remember like not having money for food, and I'm like, "Mom, I like haven't gotten a job yet. Can I get some money for food?" And she was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I don't know. There's like a sandwich shop across the street. I'm just gonna go there." And she goes, "Okay." And she was like, "I'm gonna cash app you $10." She's like, send me a screenshot of your bank account." So I did. And she's like, "All right, I'm gonna cash app you $10, and you need to go get what you're going to get, keep the receipt, and send me a picture of the receipt and send me a screenshot of your bank account." And it was like, I'm 28 years old. And that shit was like, I'm like, damn, this is my life. I'm reduced to having to like continuously ask for help, right?
Yeah.
And like, this shit just happened, man. Like, because I had to
And
go.
like, you know what? I meet so many kids that, not kids, adults that are 28, 30 years old, and they're used to having an apartment in their own place. And you tell them to go to halfway, they're like, I'm not going to a halfway house.
Right. I used to think that a halfway was for people that had nowhere to go. I used to think that a halfway was for people that were homeless, that didn't have a place to go. But I'm like, my parents love me. I can go back to their place. I don't need to go to a halfway house. But it was destroying me and destroying them, you know?
A good halfway, a good sober living is really the best environment. Whether you're a multimillionaire, whether you're homeless or whatever, there really is no place out of, because it's unhealthy for a family to be doing the things that halfway houses do. So what happens is that a family tries to become a halfway. So you have your mom and your dad living at home. The addict is living in the house.
Right.
They're doing curfew checks, making sure you're home on time. The addict has lived there his whole life, so he's manipulating.
Yeah.
Oh, Mom, I'm only 10 minutes away, da-da-da. And then the parents feel bad. Oh, well, maybe he's at a meeting. Then the addict is manipulating you for money every day. Then you're sleeping in all day, and then they want to tell you to, like, maybe you should get out of the house and get a job. And then the addict is like, fuck you, da-da-da-da.
Right.
And then they're scared of the addict living at home. And then they're like, well, maybe he's high. Then you're like, oh, you know, you don't really look too well. Oh, you think I'm high now? Da 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 da. And then they're like, well, can you take a drug test for us? Now you have like your fucking mom not trying to look at your dick.
Right.
Fucking drug test you in like a bathroom. You're fucking high and like
Right.
have fake piss under the fucking sink. And it's an unhealthy ass dynamic. Because you know what? You go to a halfway house, you're 10 minutes late. The house manager ain't playing that shit.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
And it's like, I can easily be rebellious towards my parents.
Yeah.
When another man steps up to me, there's like that weird fucking respect line where I'm like,
And
I'm
you
not
know
gonna
he does this all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
He does this, you know.
He does this all day long.
Right.
He been around the block.
Right.
He's fucking not stupid.
Right. He's heard fucking every line in
He's
the
waiting
book.
to kick your ass out.
Right.
You know, and you're just like, and you ain't got nowhere to go. So like, when it's time to be home at 10, guess what? You start showing up at 10.
Right.
When he tells you to make your bed, you start fucking making your bed.
I remember, and because so if I got clean on, and by this time now I had to get a sponsor. So through through Carl, I got to Drew.
Yeah.
And Drew started sponsoring me. And I remember, so I got to halfway, probably sometime in the beginning of November. So it was right by Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving. And I was like, yo, Drew, these motherfuckers aren't letting me extend my curfew for Thanksgiving. How dare they? I have got a family. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, what kind of fucking demands are you making? You've just come off fucking shooting heroin. You've disgraced your whole fucking family. Like, sit down, you know? It's like, what time's your curfew? I'm like 8 or whatever. He's like, all right, so fucking go there and eat early and come home if they allow you there. Did you even ask your parents if you could fucking go? You know, type thing.
And like, honestly, it's like recovery is about making it for the rest of the Thanksgivings.
Right. And it really...
And bro, I have people like, oh, it's my kid's birthday. It's going to be okay.
Right. And
how many birthdays did you miss?
And I remember like that Christmas being there and like, you know, like Spanish families type shit. They be opening the presents at midnight on Christmas Eve. And them having like being there with my whole family, having to open presents at like 8 so I could like
go to
be
halfway
back home. And I remember like hugging my mom and telling her like, Ma, I'm excited for like when we can hopefully do this without me having a curfew, you know? And I remember, man, like after just fighting through it and just really going through the motions, so I just really had a place to live. I remember I must have had maybe like 90 days clean, and I had just ridden my bike to a meeting, and we maybe went out to eat, and I came home and I was laying down, and it just like came over me where I vocally said like, God, I cannot believe I'm clean. Like, thank you. I just couldn't believe it. And at that
sometimes it happens that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, sometimes people are like, man, like what made you want to get clean? I don't think I really wanted to be clean until I had a year clean. Like I did, but it wasn't until like, there was so much back and forth my first year clean. And like, that's what I try to display to people is that you're not just going to get clean and then like, whatever. It's like this constant battle every day.
Right.
And I remember my family was so confused because they would say, oh, is it over now? And I said, I don't know. And my sister would be like, you know, Brian, you need to get your life together and like, you're never going to use again. And I'm like, honestly, it's like just for today. And like, my parents were so confused. And I remember when my sister got married, she was married for like probably like 6 months or something. We were at like Sunday brunch. And my sister was like, you know what, Brian? I finally get it. Because me and John have been married for like 6 months. We made a commitment to be married forever. But I swear to God, 3 hours ago, we were at fucking IKEA and we were arguing and he wanted this shit and I wanted that shit. And I was like, I'm fucking divorcing this motherfucker. Like, we ain't never going to be together. This shit don't fucking make no sense. We're totally opposite. It's not going to work. And then we're in the car all pissed off at each other. And then you know what? Like a couple hours later, like we're cool. And I realized like it's a just for today. And I remember so cool. I was like, hey.
You know, I remember when I tried to get clean the first time and you're like, yo, can you sleep? And I was like, yeah, dude, I've been okay. I've been sleeping fine. And you were like, what?
Yeah, I couldn't believe
you can sleep? It's like, what the fuck, dude? It's like, I couldn't sleep forever. And then you would have me, it's like, do you feel like using? I'm like, no, dude, I don't think I do. And you had me read like some shit in your diary.
Oh, yeah.
Where like, I want to use. Yeah,
like,
I want to
get high. I feel like smoking crack. Right. I can't sleep.
Like some of your entries would just be like, I want to use date that's signed. You know?
Next day, I feel like dying.
Yeah.
I still feel like using. Still depressed.
Yeah, man.
Want to kill myself. And it's like, not everyone has that experience.
Right.
You know, and I think when people get clean multiple times, they judge their time based on last time. So I've seen people try to get clean and they're like, well, last time it was like this. It's not going to be the same way.
Right.
And like when I got clean, it was so hard to stay clean every single day that when I finally got through the other side, I was like, I never want to go. Because getting clean wasn't easy. Like my first 6 months was like literally every second just felt like using.
Right.
And I was like confused. I was like, you didn't feel like using? You're like, no, I feel great. And I remember just being like, maybe I'm the only one that's fucked up.
Like maybe you're not an addict.
Yeah, bro.
Know?
I was sharing burn desires every night.
Right.
I used to cry in meetings all the time, snot coming out of my nose, arguing with my dad. like just feeling like, and like, dude, I was 17. I was like battling like identity crisis. Like all my friends are like in college living normal lives. I'm at this meeting where people say I can never drink again, and
Right.
like just feeling like I'm never gonna be normal, and like I have no friends. When I see people get clean, it's just like smooth sailing. I'm just like, you know,
Right.
like,
Yeah, man. And like and I had that kind of like God moment where like it just came over me to say out loud, like, I can't believe I'm clean. Thank God I'm clean.
mm-hmm.
And from that moment on, then I was like kind of making a conscious decision to go to meetings and to follow suggestions and to try to stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a period, all I wanted to do was use.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing the same thing. I was going to Lions Club, which was my home group, and I was just sharing, 90 days, just like raising my hand, just sharing shit. Like, I just want to get high. And I thought it would like, I would be able to do that. And then it would call somebody, like people like Baltimore John would like come up to me after the meeting and we chat and hang out. And I thought it would pass right away, and like I'd go home and I'd go to sleep, and the very next morning, like all I wanted to do was use. And it just happened like that, man. And like the bottom line was, at that point, I could look back and see all the hell that I just been through, just not even just from like being the treatment to being there. And I was like, I just don't think I can do that again. Like I
At some point when you start making these strides, you're like, if I was gonna get high, I should have got high back here. You're like, now I've come too far.
exactly right.
It's like I've come too. I remember being like, man, I got 30 days clean. I can't get high now.
Right.
And then I had 60 days clean. I was like, fuck, I have 60 days. I can't get high. I just got 60 days. Then I get 90 days. I'm like, fuck, I should have got high at 30 days. 30 days was nothing, you know?
Right. It's like I could have done that shit. I could sleep off 30 days.
Yeah.
And
then you started accumulating time
Right.
and friendship, and like the program kind of dope fiends you into staying clean.
Yeah.
It kind of like tricks you into like, one more day, just do this little thing, like do the 4-step. Don't worry about the 5th step. Like
Right.
it kind of like dope fiends us into like thinking into this just for today mentality that is really like the opposite of like how we are when we're using.
Right. Yeah, man. And I mean, and it's just like, and it's not to say that at the time, 30 days feels like a fucking eternity, like a lifetime,
Yeah.
and but you get to like 4 months and you're like, fuck, I really could have, done it back at fucking 30 days, and that
was my thing. I wanted to smoke crack one more time. When I got clean, I didn't think that I was getting clean forever.
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna get clean, see how it goes. And then I was like, I'm still gonna smoke crack like a couple more times. Like, come on. Like, I didn't really anticipate not smoking crack because I was like, all right, maybe I'm not gonna do opiates, but like I have this love affair with crack.
Right.
And I really didn't really anticipate never doing crack again until I started accumulating clean time, and it started to snowball. And then I was like, oh my God, what if I don't smoke crack again?
Right.
It's like when somebody dies, like when you give up drugs, like the thing that was there for you when no one else was, like that comforting, warm feeling, like that thing that's just, you have this relationship. So your whole identity, like there's like that mourning period, and like you're just like, am I really done with these? And everyone goes through that. Like in rehab, they like make you say a goodbye letter to like your drug of choice and stuff, And it's like, it really does feel like getting away from a toxic relationship where the only thing to really do is just put distance and time between you guys.
Yeah. From then on, my life has just been a series of events of like me wanting to do something, running it by somebody else, getting advice, and then trying my best to take their advice, and it's just been a series of that shit. And like I remember when you told me like we would talk and you'd be like, I'd tell you like about these plans I had to get my CPA exam, and that's all I want to do. I had like 90 days clean and in a halfway house, and you're like, bro, what the? He's like, worry about like staying clean. You're like, get a year clean, I would reach out to Drew, be like, yo, I need to get the fuck out of this fucking halfway house. Like this is, I'm through with it, right? And you're like, yo, no way, He's like, stay there for a year. I was like,
and when you're in halfway day, week 1, month 2, When someone says stay here for a year, you're like,
I'm
not-
like,
I'm not staying
fuck.
here a year.
Right. He's like, maybe you should, get a job. And I'm like, but how? I'm trying to study for my CPA. That's a full-time job. He's like, no, get a job,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember calling him like, hey, I got this, I got a little job offer, like doing like accounts receivable at like some insurance company, but it's only paying like $17 an hour. And he was like, what? He's like, I would have sucked a dick for $17 an hour with 90 days clean. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, I can't live off of that. And he's like, you're nuts, And and I started doing it, and for whatever I was making, $17 an hour, like I started like putting money away and like saving, and like for the first time in a long time with my fucking $17 an hour job, not having to be dependent on my parents, it just felt crazy. And I stayed in halfway for 11 months, 2 weeks. And I moved because I got a job offer to get back into my career that I thought I would never get back to again. I thought that shit was over with. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I couldn't do the things that I had originally set out to be, even clean, I thought that ship has sailed. And through like the 12 steps and the help of others, like I was able to get fucking enough courage and just change the way I look at myself just a little bit to say, maybe I should just send this fucking resume and see what happens. And it was like starting all over again. I was like at a certain level, starting front or bottom, and it was like, comparing myself to people who I had started with who are now have been in the field for now 5, 6, 7 years, like probably making triple what I make. And it's like, no, it's not about that, dude. What you did is courageous. What you've done is amazing.
And it's like, dude, you were also overdosing consecutively 9 months ago,
Right.
And it's like, bro, like I always tell everyone, it's like, bro, the turtle wins the race.
Right.
And dude, when I see people moving fast when they get clean, I just shake my head, bro. It's like, just slow down, dude. Like, just put off all that shit for 1 year. Like, just build a solid foundation. Because you can't master two things at once. You just can't.
Bro, I just got 4 years clean. I've been living now in December. It's about to be just 1 year of me living with my now fiance. We didn't live together for the first 4 years, for the first 3 years that I was clean. Because of what you said, because it was like slow, let things come, take suggestions. And like you said, the turtle wins the race.
Nothing good ever happened fast. It's like nothing good ever happened fast. Everything ever happened good to me happened slow. Think about everything in life, anything I ever tried to rush or whatever. And a lot like recovery is like martial arts. Like you don't just wake up one day and become a black belt.
Right.
Like if somebody was like, yo, I got my black belt in 2 days, you would be like, what the fuck? No, you did. Like you bought a black belt and put it on.
Wood.
Break this wood, bitch.
See if you can do it.
Break yourself, fool. But like, it's like, martial arts, it's like, bro, if there's some time to everything. It's like you can't just, even though you know what to do or like whatever, or you're good at it, like there's a step to it that takes honor, that makes it worth it.
Right.
That like what makes it meaningful is that like it's not easy.
Right.
You can't just go and become a black belt on a fucking expedited fucking course. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, people who become like in jiu-jitsu, bro, I have a friend who's been like training for like 7 years. He's a purple belt.
Right.
I think it takes like 6 years to become a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. There are things in life that you shouldn't be able to get to quickly because it would go against the whole principle they're trying to teach you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like in recovery, sometimes people try to get to places so fast that it defeats the whole purpose.
Right. I was only able to do that because I listened to other people. Because left on my own devices, I would have tried to do that shit ASAP. I would have if I wouldn't have called nobody, I would have just left halfway, right? I would have just fucking tried to do some crazy shit and like I wouldn't be where I am now, And now I can look back at all those times where I felt like my life was over, like I couldn't do this, and then I could see the way that I allowed God to act in my life, you know?
Surrender.
Right. And now it's just like, whenever something's going on, whenever I know, it's like, the first reaction is like, fuck this shit, I can't deal with it. And then the second reaction is like, I have like all this evidence that it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be okay. Let me just call somebody, you know, let me just tell somebody what's going on.
Even doing this podcast, it's like, dude, it's got to be like almost midnight. You know, it's like, bro, I worked all day. I'm fucking exhausted. I'm tired. I went to the gym. We had made a commitment to do this. I didn't think it was going to be this late.
Right.
And it's like, you and I were just at a sponsee meeting. You know what I mean? I was like, I even was like trying to get out of it. I was like,
Right.
bro, we could do it tomorrow. You're like, yo, I'm up. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. You know?
Right.
And it's like, I've learned not to put things off. And even though it's going to be difficult or it's going to be hard, I'm going to feel better going to sleep knowing that I had a full day and that I accomplished what I need to do instead of tomorrow being behind and being like, fuck, I still got to upload this podcast.
Right.
And I still got to find someone for next week and,
Yeah.
and whatever. And it's not always like that, but it's like everything in my life that I've acquired, it's done the right way. It's done not in a fast, haste,
Right.
Now, like my life is so like amazing, but it wasn't because I've been in a coma for 13 years. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, I've been fucking working little by little here and there every single day, like little fucking steps,
Right. No, I honestly, never in my life have I been able to keep a commitment, right? Never in my life have I been able to keep a commitment. So when we made the commitment, up until recently.
You changed it the first time, right?
No, I just told you I couldn't do it.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like, yeah, let's do it. I can't believe we've just been sitting here talking and whatever time it is. Like, Sam's probably like, where the fuck?
Yeah.
I'm blessed, man. I feel blessed. I never in a million years, when I was overdosing, when I was having to wear fucking long sleeves in the middle of summer so that my mom didn't know that I had track marks, I never thought that I could be here, I never thought that I would get to a place to where I'd be in a stable relationship where I'd be able to, be a friend, be a son again, be a fiance, whatever the case may be. Like you said, it didn't happen just because I just was in a coma for 4 years,
Yeah, you put the work in.
Put the work in, and it's just a blessing, man.
I tell people all the time, I was like, when I talk to people that are getting clean, I always say like, what do you want to do? And they'll say, I want to do this. I was like, you do the exact opposite. Like you don't really grow in life doing what you want to do. You grow in life doing what you don't want to do. A lot, like I don't want to do this fucking I'm tired as fuck right now. It's like I grow when I do the things that I don't want to do. Like if I have two options, I'm not gonna grow doing the easy route. Like I want to go the harder route. I try to do that in my life, and I try to practice that so that when hard shit does come, it's easy for me because I put myself in difficult situations. So, hey, I love you so much, bro.
I love you, man.
It was cool seeing you on the podcast, reminiscing about how much... You have acid flashbacks?
No, I think that's just fake.
I think I have. No, really? I swear, bro. I think I have flashbacks. I'm not... I see bright lights. You don't see that?
I think you might have just gotten up too quick, dude.
No, dude. Sometimes I swear, like, the light will get brighter... And I'll see trails when I'm not like obviously tripping. But hey, I appreciate you. Thank you, bro. I love you too, bro. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. This show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.